Linda. Kahve yapar mısın Linda? Ver bakalım. Linda.
Çağrı. Kevser, hoş geldin. Nasılsınız? İyi misiniz millet? Nasıl böyle? Bence böyle de iyi oldu. İçeriden biri konuşuyor maşallah. Ha, yanınızda gibi miyim şu an? Çok merak ettim şu an. Aa, nasıl dinliyorum? Alo. Kevser, burada mısın? Belki yanında gideyim.
Buradan Murat Kurban'a, Ekrem İmamoğlu'na sesleniyorum. Siz İstanbul'un belediye başkanı adayısınız. Bağımsız belediye başkanı adayı değil mi? Ben de yok siz bağımsız olamazsınız. Siz cebinizden bir maaşınızı, bir aylık maaşınızı devlet için, millet için, o halk için vermezsiniz. Vermezsiniz. Bak ben elektrik maaşıma 10.500 liranın 7.000,
Ses çok kötü.
500 lirasını
Benim sesim güzel ama. Yani karaoke güzel. Linda, my instrument test your other man, my voice and instrument test. Bak, şarkına. Yardım. Yes. Şimdi bakıyor ne yapacağını bilmiyor. Ne diyor bu adam? Bu adam ne diyor? Ne istiyor bu adam diye. Kime diyor? Bana diyor. Ben şimdi içeriden elektronik sistemle yayın yapacağım arkadaşlar. Siz de bana destek olacaksınız. Yani eski zamanlardaki şey gibi, televizyon anteni ayarlar gibi yani. Ben şimdi içeriden müzik çalacağım, şarkı söyleyeceğim. Siz bana evet nokta güzel gidiyor, ben güzel, şu an her şey güzel, sanki yanımda gibisin. Bu ses güzel, nokta koymak demek bu demek. In the other land, my voice high for smoke. People not listening me. Rida dida dam, rida dida dam, rida dida dam, rida dida dida dam, rida dida dida dida dam, rida dida dam, rida dida. köşede ben varım, unutamazsın. O mutlu günlerden gelir aklına. Sen beni ömrünce unutamazsın. Sen beni ömrünce unutamazsın. Resimleri yırtıp attım diye, mektupları yırtıp attın diye, bir mazi var oldu nasıl senin. Sen beni ömrünce unutamazsın. Dersler bence güzel ya. Ben beğendim. Ben bilgisayardan dinliyorum. Yani bir mikrofonun filtre koyarsam şayet. Ne diyorsun? Bence iyi. Alo. Dinde danışmaya. 6714 dinde danışmaya. I want coffee dinde.
Dilimin bir xoşa her dem biter ez dixwazim te bibînim her roj her saet tu gulamî ez hez dikim te kirmanjî here gulê kirmanjî here gulê were ba min kirmanjî here gulê.
Try closing your eyes and imagining the entire history of the blue planet we call home. From the moment it was just a lifeless, fiery ball of lava floating in the vast darkness of space, to the brilliant world of city lights we see today. All of that majesty, brutality, and wonder is now neatly compressed into exactly one cycle of day and night. 24 hours. Suppose our Earth was officially born at the stroke of midnight. 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Can you guess at what time the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the icons of power that once spread terror across the continents, would let out their first roar? In the early morning mist? At high noon? Or in the late hours of the evening? And the biggest, most haunting question, at what moment during those 24 long hours did the species that calls itself the master of all things, humanity, step onto the stage of history? The truth might just send shivers down your spine. The entire history of human civilization you've ever studied in books. From the time the pharaohs ordered the construction of the towering pyramids of Giza, to the empires that rose and fell. From the brutal world wars that stained the oceans with blood, to the moment humanity launched spacecraft toward the stars, and even the very moment you are hearing these words. All of that massive and frantic human legacy has, in fact, unfolded in less than the final 1/10 of a second of the day. Just a lightning-fast blink of an eye. That is the only space we occupy on the endless scale of the universe. 4.5 billion years is a figure so colossal, so macroscopic, that our small human brains cannot fully imagine or digest it. 70 or 80 long years of a human life, placed next to the age of the Earth, is not even equal to a single grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. Therefore, to truly grasp the magnificence of this planet, today we will establish a new rule. We will compress all 4.5 billion years of Earth's history into a 24-hour countdown clock. According to the ruthless rules of this clock, every hour that passes is equivalent to about 187 million actual years. For every minute you tap your foot, this planet has aged another 3 million years. And with every tick of the second hand, 52,000 years of history flash by, sweeping away countless lives, submerging supercontinents, and leveling the greatest mountains. On this clock of absolute time, all things become ephemeral. A vast, surging ocean can evaporate into a desert in just a few seconds. Giant creatures that seemed invincible can be completely wiped out after a single sigh. Are you ready to witness the primal violence of nature? Are you ready to face the most surreal miracles of evolution and taste the despair of the most brutal extinctions ever to sweep across this globe? Take a deep breath. Relax your mind and cast aside every concept of time you have ever known. The greatest journey of life, back to the dawn of time, is about to begin. Welcome to the 24-hour Chronicles of Earth. The clock strikes exactly 0 hours, 0 minutes. The beginning of everything. At this moment, if you could step space and look down at where Earth should be, you would not see any deep blue oceans or lush continents. Instead, greeting you is a nightmare sphere, a massive fiery slaughterhouse suspended in the cold space of the young solar system. Scientists call this the Hadean Eon, a name given after Hades, the god who rules the underworld in Greek mythology. And indeed, no words could more accurately depict Earth at that time. It was a hell on Earth. 4.5 billion years ago, there was no solid ground for you to step on. The entire surface of the planet was a boiling magma ocean, churning and surging at temperatures of over 2,000 degrees Celsius. Gravity was doing its violent work, pulling giant rocks and wandering cosmic debris to slam into this molten sphere, releasing terrifying amounts of energy. The sky had no blue. It was a gloomy curtain of dust, toxic sulfur gases, dense carbon dioxide and steam rising from lava pits. The atmosphere at this time was so heavy and toxic that it could crush and dissolve any living organism in an instant. Earth at 0 hours 0 minutes was a planet of pure death, a world that rejected all seeds of life. However, the violence of the universe did not stop there. Only about 10 minutes have passed on our clock. It is now 12:10 a.m. An event of apocalyptic proportions is about to take place. A fateful moment that will change the trajectory of this planet's history forever. From the darkness of the vast universe, another wandering planet is hurtling toward Earth at a destructive speed. Astronomers call it Theia, a protoplanet approximately the size of Mars, with a diameter of more than 6,000 kilometers. Invisible but absolutely powerful gravity locked the orbits of these two giant spheres together in an unavoidable dance of death. There was no one there to witness it, no creature to cry out in fear, only the deathly silence of space before the storm. And then the collision occurred. A collision with a horrific destructive power far beyond all human imagination. The energy released was billions of times greater than the most powerful atomic bomb ever built. The outer layers of both Theia and Earth were immediately vaporized into gas and superheated plasma. The intruding planet Theia was torn into battered fragments, while our Earth also nearly shattered completely. Earth's axis was knocked askew, and Theia's heavy iron core sank deep and merged with Earth's core, making our planet's magnetic field eventually strong enough to withstand deadly radiation storms from the sun. From the debris floating in orbit, trillions of tons of molten rock and cosmic dust were flung around Earth, forming a massive fiery ring, looking no different from the beautiful rings of Saturn today. Over time, gravity once again intervened. Over thousands of years, equivalent to just a blink of an eye on the 24-hour clock, the fragments in this ring gradually coalesced, rubbed, melted, and fused together. From the ashes of the greatest destruction, a loyal companion was born. The moon officially appeared. In those early days, the moon was much closer to Earth than it is now. If you looked up at the sky, you would see a giant orb of rock, glowing red with flows of lava, occupying a massive portion of space. And it was the presence of this great satellite that became the savior of Earth. The moon's gravity acts as a giant anchor, keeping our planet's axial tilt stable at 23.5 degrees. Without the violent collision with Theia, without the birth of the moon, Earth would constantly wobble in space. The poles would continuously flip, the climate would vary chaotically, and complex life might never have had the chance to exist. The destruction named Theia, ironically, was the greatest gift the universe bestowed upon us. Our clock continues to count down indifferently. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., then 3 a.m. After the horrific shock, Earth began to enter an era of soothing. The cold space of the universe gradually sucked away the fervent heat of the planet. The churning magma surface began to cool, solidifying into a thin, pitch-black and cracked basalt crust. Giant volcanoes continued to erupt, tearing through the sky with pillars of ash and smoke tens of kilometers high, relentlessly pumping greenhouse gases and water vapor into an increasingly dense atmosphere. Water vapor. That is the most important keyword right now. It was brought by millions of comets and asteroids bombarding Earth for hundreds of millions of years, or released from the very rocks deep within the planet. Everywhere across the murky sky, giant, heavy clouds began to accumulate. The atmosphere was saturated to its limit. And as the clock prepared to strike 4 a.m., Earth's temperature finally dropped below the boiling point of water. The first drop of water in the planet's history condensed and fell onto the scorching rock surface, evaporating instantly. But following that drop was another, then thousands, then billions of drops. The greatest rain in history began to pour down. It was not a storm that lasted for a few days or weeks. This great storm lasted for millions of years without stopping. Water cascaded from the gray sky, drenching the barren volcanic plains, flowing into torrential rivers of mud and minerals, gradually filling giant meteorite craters.
Ne yaptım? Tava yaptım.
4 billion years ago, the million-year rain finally ceased.
Kanımızı da açalım.
The sky gradually cleared. The planet's surface had completely
Tava yaptım kendime.
Hellfire was extinguished, making way for something the primordial ocean.
Bu çok alçakta kaldım ya.
And thawing. This was no idyllic
Oy.
tropical beach. It was a vast expanse of water, deep green or murky brown from the dissolution of so much iron and minerals. The seawater was extremely acidic.
Gidiyor mu Kevser?
But it was a brilliant
Eyvallah, biz buradayız.
the massive concentration of carbon dioxide.
Efe Coffee hizmetler sunar. Şu tavayı yemek istiyorsan, yani Türk tipi tava, Siemreap'te bir Türk'ün elinden ve Mustafa'nın özel sosuyla, parmaklarının lezzetiyle, yani şu tavayı sanki lokum yedim.
The clock struck 4 a.m. The sky above remained a thick, gloomy, and toxic orange red. Acid rains still occasionally poured down onto the desolate ocean surface. At this moment, if you were to glide over the giant, pitch-black waves, you would see that Earth still appeared to be a dead land. Not a single branch or blade of grass, no sign of birds or the growl of wild beasts. Absolute silence enveloped the surface of the world. But do not be discouraged. The universe always knows how to hide its greatest secrets in the darkest places.
Anca bak.
Let's dive down together.
Kıyamet kopuyor
Deep
burada.
down, thousands of meters to the bottom of the primordial ocean, where sunlight can never penetrate. In this cold abyss under immense pressure, the Earth's crust was cracked open. Frigid seawater seeped through the fissures, touched the fiery magma chambers below, was heated to hundreds of degrees Celsius, and blasted back up. They created black smokers, hydrothermal vents that constantly discharged into the ocean a thick, soup-like mixture full of minerals, hydrogen sulfide, iron, and primordial chemical compounds. Right at the fragile boundary between the bone-chilling cold of the seabed and the furious heat of magma, one of the universe's most surreal miracles quietly took place. Billions upon billions of random chemical reactions collided relentlessly for tens of millions of years. Atoms of
Zehra'nın Z'si hoş geldin.
hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, through some miraculous arrangement of probability, bonded to form the first organic molecules.
Duyuyorsun değil mi Zehra?
Then, those molecules
Ne kadar
curled
entelektüel bir YouTuber'ım.
enveloping each other in a thin lipid membrane to
Millet
separate
orasını burasını
themselves
açıyor.
in the chaotic external
Bir de
environment.
derler ki Mustafa'nın kanalı çok kültürsüz.
Boom! An invisible spark of life was lit. A microscopic structure with no eyes, no brain, no limbs, but possessing a power that no rock or mountain could ever have. The ability to self-replicate. The first single-celled organism of Earth was officially born. Every living thing on this planet today, from the giant blue whale, an ancient oak tree, to you yourself sitting here listening to these words, all share a single common ancestor originating from that murky black smoker at the bottom of the ocean all those years ago. Our great last universal common ancestor. The clock of time still coldly ticks each beat. 5 a.m., 7 a.m., then 10 a.m. If you're expecting a giant sea monster to emerge from the water, you will be disappointed. For the next 6 grueling hours on our virtual clock, equivalent to about 1 billion years of actual history, life virtually stood still. This era lasted a terrifyingly long time. The planet's only protagonists were single-celled bacteria invisible to the human eye. They floated aimlessly, clinging to dark rock crevices, eating chemical compounds to survive, and were constantly wiped out by meteorite collisions or extreme temperature changes. They were too small, too fragile. Earth seemed capable of ending this biological experiment at any moment with a single sigh of nature. But life is more resilient than we imagine, and evolution never stops searching for opportunities. The clock strikes 1 p.m. That is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun is shining its harshest rays down onto the ocean surface. At this moment, a branch of bacteria decided to carry out the boldest revolution in biological history. Instead of hiding in the deep sea and eating scavenged chemicals, they decided to swim to the surface waters. Scientists call them blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria invented an unprecedented biological machine, photosynthesis.
Yemeğimizin de laflarız.
They use their green chlorophyll to absorb sunlight directly, breaking down water molecules and carbon dioxide gas, thereby manufacturing sugar for food. This ability to create energy from nothing turned cyanobacteria into absolute rulers.
Taşınacağız
They
şimdi.
multiplied at a dizzying speed, carpeting the surface of the primordial oceans with giant microbial mats. However, there was one deadly detail in this great invention. Like every industrial plant, the process of photosynthesis also produced waste. And the waste that cyanobacteria discharged directly into the ocean environment at that time, ironically, was exactly what we breathe every day. Oxygen. Remember, for all living organisms on Earth before 1 p.m., oxygen was a worthless thing. No, worse than that, it was a highly toxic substance. It was a highly reactive gas, a brutal acid capable of tearing through cell membranes, destroying DNA, and incinerating anaerobic bacteria on contact. As cyanobacteria populations exploded, they pumped billions of tons of oxygen into the ocean. A global-scale massacre began. Wherever oxygen spread, primordial anaerobic life was destroyed. Throughout the oceans, huge amounts of iron dissolved in seawater began to react with oxygen. The iron rusted. Billions of tons of deep red iron oxide precipitated and sank to the seabed, dyeing the entire ocean into a giant pot of rusty soup. It took hundreds of millions of years later, when all the iron in the ocean had been oxidized, for the excess oxygen to begin bubbling up and flooding into the atmosphere.
Ziya hoş geldin.
The world changed
Sesine belki.
forever. The sky gradually
Adam,
turned from a
daha önce
toxic
söyleyen
orange
oldu
to
mu?
a beautiful pale blue.
Sen de hakkı yenmişlerdensin işte.
Yet the price for that blue sky was extremely high.
Şu
Geologists
an
call
sana
this
adam
the
diyemem.
Great
Gör.
Oxygenation Event. For the
Adaletsiz
first time in
işte.
history, it wasn't a meteorite or a volcano, but life itself that triggered a horrific mass extinction, slaughtering its own kind on a planetary scale. And the consequences of the oxygen catastrophe didn't stop there. It sparked the most severe climate tragedy in history. When
Cambodia,
oxygen
Siemreap.
flooded the atmosphere, It immediately reacted with and destroyed
Of
the
çok
methane,
güzel olmuş ya.
the powerful greenhouse gas
Kendimim
that
benim
was
ya.
helping to keep Earth warm.
Bir insan
Like a
Tavayı bu kadar
greenhouse,
güzel yapar mı
every
ya?
window smashed in the middle of a freezing winter when the methane blanket was torn apart. Earth's temperature plummeted uncontrollably. The clock
Wow.
strikes 2 p.m. Sunlight still shines, but there is no heat.
yani
Global temperatures drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Huge, pure white ice sheets began to form at the
Yani.
poles and crawl toward the equator. The white ice reflected sunlight
Ay,
back
aşırı
into
güzel ya.
space, making the Earth colder and colder.
hani lokum yiyorum sanki.
An unstoppable loop of doom. Very quickly, all the oceans were frozen solid under a layer of ice kilometers thick.
Anında bitti.
Even the hottest equatorial regions were submerged in perpetual blizzard. Looking down from space, Earth was no longer a fireball, nor was it a blue sphere. It had turned into Snowball Earth, a brilliant white, silent, and deadly icy prison drifting soullessly through the
Aşırı
surface.
güzel ya.
The young life that had
Yani
just burst forth was
şunu
immediately
yemek için
frozen,
insan var ya 2000
trapped
dolar
under
uçak bilet
thousands
parasını
of
verir
meters
gelir
of
yani.
ice in absolute
Hani
darkness.
Erzurum çağ kebabı,
All
kebabı
hope seemed to have been
Siemreap
extinguished.
tava kebabı.
Yet, with an unbelievable tenacity, deep beneath the cracked ice, around the rare and faintly active
Olamaz ya.
volcanic vents, tiny seeds of life were still
Bu kadar
huddled
güzel bir
together,
yemek olabilir mi ya?
warming each other, patiently waiting for the next miracle
İnsana
of
kule yapar bu
rescue
ya.
from Mother Earth. The game of survival has only gone
Ay
on for
yiyorsun,
about
yapmıyor da.
half a day, and the most horrific events
Hani Bülent Ersoy'u buraya
are still
davet
waiting
ediyorum.
ahead. The great
Bülent Hanım,
Snowball Earth drifted aimlessly through space.
hayallerinizdeki
Our Earth at this
beyaz
time
tuktuklu
was
prens
like a
benim.
giant icy tomb, locked in a harsh, seemingly eternal
Bu devrin
winter.
popstarıyım.
The entire planet was encased in a layer of ice so thick that
Aşk kapınıza
sunlight could not
talibim.
penetrate to the oceans below. Young life, having just
Aşkınızın
blossomed,
fark etmiyor
was
ön
now
arka
pushed to
kapı.
the brink,
Talibim ben.
huddling around rare remaining underwater volcanic vents in the deep sea.
Bir dönülmez
Struggling
akşamın
to cleave to
ufkundayım
every
söylerim.
bit of heat from Earth's core.
Yırtılırsın böyle.
But you know, this planet has never succumbed to the silence. Even when completely
Sen bu
frozen,
tava kebabını yerken
the
ha.
fiery magma heartbeat within Earth's core still
Mutfaktan böyle acı acı ses gelir.
Immense
Sen böğrüne
pressure
vura vura
building up
dinlersin.
beneath the rigid rock crust finally found a way to be released.
Çaktırma. Linda
A
geldi.
series of supervolcanoes
Yok,
awakened
yabancı değil.
simultaneously,
Askerlik
roaring
resmi var.
as they tore through kilometers of thick ice. They didn't just erupt fiery red lava onto the stark
Ya
white
Bülent
surface,
içmeyi bilmiyorsun.
but
Şunu
more
ağzında
importantly,
geğirip durma
they
Allah'ını
released
seversen ya.
billions of tons of carbon
İbacım, yok,
dioxide
yok.
back into
No,
the
no woman.
atmosphere.
Same.
This time, there were no rains or open oceans to absorb this massive amount of greenhouse gas.
Memesi var.
Carbon dioxide built up into a thick blanket,
Set
trapping heat from the sun and locking it onto Earth. The extreme greenhouse effect began to exert its magical power. Global temperatures
Baba ben öyle bir
gradually
yemek
crept
yedim
up.
ki.
The eternal
Bu yemek
ice
elimi
began to
ayağımı
crack
yıkamayla
and
o
melt.
hortumun altına takıp da yıkanmam lazım.
Liquid water once again flooded
Yeah.
the planet. The Snowball was rescued.
Snow.
Our time clock passed 2 p.m., then 3 p.m., 5 p.m., 7 p.m. The sun on the virtual clock was gradually setting below the horizon, casting long shadows that enveloped the planet. Dear audience, we are entering an era that geologists often jokingly call the boring billion. The reason for this name is that for nearly 7 long hours on our scale, equivalent to more than 1 billion years in reality, Earth's surface seemed frozen in a state of absolute equilibrium. The climate was strangely stable. The supercontinents drifted together and then stood still. The oceans were calm, grey and oxygen poor. There were no asteroid disasters, no ice ages, and no large creatures appeared to break this melancholy silence. But don't let the peace on the surface fool you. Nature was not sleeping. Right beneath those gentle waves, the greatest revolution in biological history was silently taking place on a scale so small that the naked eye could not see it. At some random moment in the vast ocean, a giant predatory bacterial cell swam over and devoured a smaller bacterium. Normally, that tiny enemy would have been digested and turned into energy. However, a miraculous system error occurred. The small bacterium did not die. Instead, it continued to live inside the predator's body. The swallowed one possessed a superpower that the hunter craved, the ability to use oxygen to generate massive energy. These two tiny organisms reached an eternal pact. The large one provided safe shelter and food, while the small one acted as a tireless, non-stop power plant. That tiny bacterium, over time, evolved and became mitochondria, an indispensable organelle in every complex cell today. This great merger is scientifically known as the endosymbiotic theory. It gave birth to eukaryotes. Every animal, plant, fungus, and even we, humans ourselves, are direct descendants of this random but fortunate devouring. Without that great cooperation, Earth would forever be just a mud puddle filled with simple bacteria. The clock strikes 8:30 p.m. The night sky begins to descend, covering the expanse. There are only 3.5 hours left until the end of the day, and Earth's billions of years of patience are finally rewarded. At the bottom of warm, shallow seas, life finally transcended microscopic limits. Single cells began to cluster, sticking together, dividing labor, and forming the first multicellular organisms. The Ediacaran period officially commences. If you were to dive into the Ediacara garden back then, you would think you were lost on some distant planet rather than Earth. There were no fish, no coral, no algae here. Instead, there were the most bizarre biological forms to ever exist. Some creatures looked like giant fern leaves firmly planted in the mud, swaying with the ocean currents. Some species looked like oval air mattresses bobbing on the sand. They were soft, had no bones, no hard shells, no heads, no eyes, and didn't even have a mouth or digestive system. They just lay there, in absolute stillness, directly absorbing nutrients dissolved in the seawater through their fragile skin. The Garden of Ediacara was a world of absolute serenity. An era without biological crime. There were no brutal predators, nor were there fearful prey hiding away. No claws, no teeth, no bloodshed. Everything just floated and existed in a gentle dance under the dim moonlight filtering through the water. But this peace did not last long. The darkness of night was falling. Life was about to discover the most cruel weapon, but also the greatest evolutionary driver of all time. Predation. The minute hand of the clock is ticking toward the 9 p.m. mark. Violence is about to begin. The darkness of night begins to fall upon our virtual clock face. But deep beneath the silent oceans of the Ediacaran period, a weapon, the most terrifying, the most brutal, but also the greatest in evolutionary history, was beginning to take shape. That was the mouth, and along with it, a complete digestive system. Think back for a moment. For billions of years, life on Earth was incredibly innocent and passive. Creatures only knew how to lie flat on the muddy floor, swaying with the ocean currents and slowly absorbing nutrients through their cell membrane. That serenity, that perfect and silent balance, shattered forever when an anonymous mutant creature realized a cruel truth of nature. Why struggle to pick up meager scraps of energy floating in the water when you can seize that entire massive block of energy by tearing apart and devouring someone else? The act of predation was officially born. It tore apart the eternal peace treaty of the Garden of Ediacara, turning the ocean from a quiet paradise into a bloody arena. The velvet curtain of innocence has closed. The most fierce biological arms race of all time has officially begun. The clock strikes 9:04 p.m. Only a few short minutes passed on our macroscopic scale, but it was a moment that paleontologists must bow to in awe and name. The Big Bang of life. The Cambrian explosion. Like a nuclear reactor spinning out of control, biodiversity exploded at an insane speed and with unprecedented chaos. To survive in a world suddenly full of hungry enemies, gentle creatures were forced to evolve or accept death. They began extracting calcium carbonate dissolved in seawater to cast for themselves hard armored shells. They grew rows of sharp spikes protruding all around their bodies to pierce through enemies. They developed complex jointed legs to crawl faster and hydrodynamic tail fins to swim with more maneuverability. But the greatest invention of the Cambrian period was not fangs or claws, it was eyes. Before the Cambrian, the world was completely blind. But now, photosensitive cells have converged. For the first time on this planet, sunlight piercing through the water did not just bring heat or photosynthetic energy. It brought information. The ability to see enemies from a distance and the ability to lock onto prey with binocular vision completely changed the rules of the survival game. The creature that saw first survived. The creature that was blind was eliminated. And stepping out from the light of that visual evolution, the ocean's first brutal king, the most primitive ultimate predator, has been revealed. Call its name with awe, Anomalocaris. If you were a tiny trilobite diligently digging in the mud on the seabed, Anomalocaris was the Grim Reaper. Imagine a monster up to 1 meter long, a size so absurdly giant compared to the creatures that were only a few millimeters long at that time. It glided through the calm water silently with 2 rows of undulating fins along its sides, just like a biological stealth submarine. On its head, large bulging compound eyes composed of thousands of tiny lenses swiveled constantly, scanning the seabed with a cold gaze. Once it locked onto its target, it accelerated. At the front of its mouth, 2 giant tentacles bristling with sharp spikes grasped the prey tightly, lifting the victim off the mud. The trilobite's armor was crushed and fed directly into a round mouth bristling with dozens of razor-sharp conical teeth, functioning exactly like a camera lens tightening shut. The animal kingdom had its first emperor, and his crown was forged from cruelty. However, the great game of life could not be imprisoned under the salt water forever. The clock hand moves to 9:52 p.m. The atmosphere at this time had undergone a silent but decisive transformation. Thanks to the tireless efforts of cyanobacteria and marine algae over billions of years, the amount of oxygen pumped into the air had reached sufficient concentration. Under the impact of ultraviolet rays from the sun, oxygen molecules in the stratosphere were torn apart and recombined into ozone. The planet's greatest invisible shield was complete. It enveloped the Earth, repelling deadly ultraviolet radiation, turning the vast arid land, which had been a scorched wasteland for 4 billion years, into a promised land of absolute safety. The landing began, first with the silent armies, Layers of moss, ancient fungi, and primitive ferns timidly crawled ashore. Their roots secreted acid, breaking down solid rock, decomposing minerals, and creating the miracle called soil. For the first time since its birth, Earth was clothed in a green cloak full of vitality. And wherever there is food, there will be hunters. Following in the footsteps of Flora, the bravest creatures began to leave the safety of the ocean. Arthropods led the way. The ancestors of scorpions, spiders, and centipedes stepped out of the water, bringing along chitinous armor to retain moisture and a completely new respiratory system to breathe the air. Not long after, our ancestors, lobe-finned fish like Tiktaalik, also used their bare, muscular fins to crawl through muddy swamps, struggling to stretch their necks and gulp their first breaths of air. Life had conquered the entire planet. 10:30 p.m. Welcome to the Carboniferous period, the era of giant nightmares. Earth at this time looked exactly like the setting of a sci-fi horror movie. Everywhere across the surface of the supercontinents was covered by dense, humid and dark primeval tropical swamp forests. Ancient ferns and scale trees reached straight into the sky, soaring up to 30 meters high, forming a canopy that completely blocked out the sunlight. But the strangest thing lay in the atmosphere. During the Carboniferous, nature had not yet invented bacteria capable of decomposing wood. As a result, when billions of ancient giant trees fell, they did not rot. They piled on top of each other, buried under layers of mud, taking all the sequestered carbon permanently underground. Excessive photosynthesis pushed atmospheric oxygen levels to surge to 35%. A potent dose of doping for the animal kingdom, especially for insects, creatures that breathe through spiracles along their bodies. The higher the atmospheric oxygen levels, the more they shattered all size limits. Under that stifling forest canopy, if you hear a deafening flapping of wings, duck down immediately. A terror of the Carboniferous sky has just glided over your head. That is Meganora, a giant predatory dragonfly the size of a hawk, with a wingspan of nearly 1 meter. They tear through the wind, diving at terrifying speeds, using their spine-covered legs to snatch prey right out of midair. On the ground, the true nightmares are crawling. A jet-black armored monster, over 2.5 meters long and 0.5 meter wide, slithers out from the swamp mist. That is Arthropleura, the largest giant millipede species to ever exist. The rapid crunching sound of dozens of pairs of legs clawing over rotting wood signals the presence of an unstoppable meat-grinding machine. Humans, with our small bodies, if transported back here, would be nothing more than appetizers for the aggressive bugs crawling everywhere. But the bizarre prosperity of the Carboniferous could not last. Nature decided to press the delete button on all life on a planetary scale. The clock strikes 10:40 p.m. We are about to witness the bloodiest event in the
Nasıl arkadaşlar
4.5
yerimiz?
billion years of the Earth's existence. The Great Dying, the Permian mass extinction.
Her geçen gün daha fazla yeşillenmeye başladı. Yeni sebzeler falan da alacağım. Yeni ağaçlar da dikeceğim buraya ama sizler destek olursanız mümkün bu. Ben tek başıma yapamam. Desteğinizi bekliyoruz. Sahnemiz nasıl olmuş? Ne demiştik? Volkan geldi. Yeşil yeşil. Yürüyor. Bülent Ersoy geldi. Evet. Evet. Geldi buradan. Şurada oturdu. Arif sağ sazını aldı. Güler duman. Evet çalıyor burada. Çok güzel koktu be. Suyu vurdum ya. Çok güzel koktu. Suyu yedi ya, nasıl güzel koktu Allah'ım yarabbim. Linda. Dorkey. No. Room K. Arkadaşlar bugün en dipteki odada kalacağız. Linda anahtarı getirirse. Linda da kafasından darbe mi almış, ne olmuş bilmiyorum ki, sordum onu da. Ya bazen kendini de unutuyor, adını falan unutuyor ya. Allah şifasını verir inşallah. Ama düzelteceğim ben onu, inanıyorum yani. Arkadaşlar burası benim evim. Bu tesisler, şurayı test edeceğim bugün. Yani test edeceğimden kastım şu. Normalde benim evim burası. Burası benim evim. Bu arada ilk kez evimi size gösteriyorum. Yani kapatayım şöyle mahremi. Herkes bilmez. Ben de çok eski bir, yani uzun zamandır çadırda yatma gibi bir hastalığım var benim arkadaşlar. Herkes bilmez yani bu özelliğimi. Herkese de hitap etmiyor zaten. Böyle ağaçların dibinde, doğada yatmak gibi böyle bir hayalim var benim. O hayallerimi de gerçekleştiriyorum yani. Bu gece üstteki odada kalacağım. 10 dolar vereceğiz odaya. 10 dolarlık hizmet satın alacağız. Yani şöyle bir lunch gibi düşün. Girişe 20 dolar bilet parası verdim, 20 dolar. Linda bir kahvaltı getirdi. Biraz önce de et tava yaptık. Biramı içiyorum, cigaramı içiyorum. 10 dolar daha fazla vereceğim. Şu üstteki şu odada kalacağım. Anahtarı getirirse Linda oraya taşıyacağım. Ve üşenmeyeceğim. Televizyonumu, bilgisayarımı, buzdolabımı, odanın bitmiş halini size göstereceğim. Ve ben o odada yatacağım kendi çarşafımla. Siz geldiğinizde çarşafınız değişiyor. Normalde dün gece bu odada kaldım arkadaşlar. Göstereyim biraz size buraları. Hem biraz bir sohbet edelim mi? Hadi edelim.
Despite every disaster, despite the most desperate odds,
Da
the
kıyafetleri
flame
getirmiş.
of life
Diyorum ya,
still
unutuyor ya.
flickered beneath the layers of
Getirip buraya
ash.
koymuş kıyafetleri.
As greenhouse gases
Ya da özel diye girmiyor herhalde. Özel alana girmiyor da olabilir. Ben dışarıdaydım ya. Şimdi ben fantezi yapıyorum, tamam mı? Her gün bir odayı hazırlattırıyorum. Bak şu an benim odam. Ve şimdi dışarıya çıkıyoruz. Bak şu dışarıyı gördünüz ya. Şimdi ben dün gece bu odayı test ettim arkadaşlar. Aşırı huzurluydu. Aşırı. Odada gördüğünüz gibi televizyon var. Ben bu televizyonu buraya asmadım. Buraya koydum çünkü her odada taşıyorum. Bir tane televizyonum var. Bir tane buzdolabım var, oda buzdolabım. Bir tane kasam var. Bunları taşıyorum. Her odada şöyle bir şeyimiz var arkadaşlar. Bakın şu an özel mahremi gösteriyorum size. Benim eşyam sadece böyle bir, bu da İsviçre'den geldi. Ayşe'ye teşekkür ediyorum. Fazla kıyafetim olmadığı için, kıyafetim olsaydı buraya asacaktım. Burası banyo. Her odada böyle banyolar var ve vestiyer odanın içinde oluyor. Böyle bir ayna. İşte doğanın içinde, yeşilliğin içinde. Tabii korunaklı. Hani şey yok. Şu an burası serin, gayet güzel. İşte duşumuz var. Ve odamız var. Ve odalar genelde bu şekilde çift kişilik yatak oluyor. Genelde böyle ankorvat işlemeli şeyler yapıyorlar. Kliması var. Şu an oda çok serin. Yani aynen, sana ne kardeşim? Yani o kadar haklısın ki şu an. Yani kesinlikle. Dur, ciciklerini göstermeyeyim. Dava açarlar sonra. Derler ki böyleyken böyle. Hiç gerek var mı? Hiç gerek yok bence. Bu ne diyor? Dinozorlar bilmem neler falan böyle. Yani hiç gerek var mı? Bence hiç gerek yok. Yani. Yaşadın, nasılsın? Yani hiç lüzum var mı? Beğendiniz mi arkadaşlar? Öncelikle bunu soruyorum. Beğendiyseniz nokta koymanız lazım. Ben okuyamıyorum her yazıyı. Çok dikkatli bakmam lazım. Şimdi üstümü giyineceğim. Size konser vereceğim. Sahneye hazırlanıyor gibi. Yani kamera arkasını siz şu an dinliyorsunuz. Utanmıyor musunuz insanların özel hayatını dinlemeye? Ayıp denen bir şey var yani. Ünlü olmak çok zormuş yani. Daha ilk günler bedel ödüyorum resmen ya. Allah'tan tesis bana özel yani. Yani ah kameraya ele dokunsa da açılsa diye nasıl da dua ediyor. Allah'ım ya. Böyle de takipçinin böyle hayırsızı. Duaya bak ya. Ne olursun azıcık kenarından azıcık böyle elin çarpsın. Selamın hello. Biz diyoruz ki yani ana bacı kadının baktığı göze bak ya. Gözün gözlüğü senin ya. Gerçekten ya. Celal görüyorsun değil mi? Eskide nerede kaldı o eski Ramazanlar? Ramazanlardan eser kalmadı, eser. Nerede o Ramazanlar? Bir de şeyler var, Atçeler, Ayşeler falan var. Yani. Yok, şimdi ortalık jalelere kaldı, halelere kaldı. O gün bugün bozuldu işte, ne var ne yok. Yani. Bir kıyamet, bir fırtına, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Anası babasına hamileyim dedi ya, o gün karardı adamın hayatı. Yok çocuğa bakmış canım, nafakasını vermiş. Ya sen ne kadar ilgilisin böyle konularla ya. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi. Selamun hello, selamun hello. Tövbe estağfurullah. İnsan, ilk insan. Hani alemlerde bir defa geldi. Allah onun için yarattı. Sonra insan yalnızlığı sevmedi. Yalnızlık senin olsun dedi. Allah sordu. Ne istersin ya Adem? Adem istedi. Cennetteki bütün meyveleri bu dünyada istedi. Sonra bir kadın, aman ne göz, aman ne dudak. Adem. Yanılacaksın Adem. İsteme Adem. Adem istedi. Allah verdi. Adem evlat istedi. Allah verdi. Adem Gök kubbenin içinde özel bir mülk istedi. Allah yap dedi. Bakım var. Ağaç var. Adem bilmem dedi. Sen yap dedi. Allah o zaman şeytanı, o zaman işçi yarattı. Şeytan Adem'e hizmet etti. En güzel evleri yaptı. Adem beğenmedi. En güzel yemekleri yaptı. Beğenmedi. Adem illa da cennet dedi. İlla da Havva dedi. Allah Havva'nın bir kopyasını, Lilith'i ol dedi. Eli Havva, yüzü Havva, gözü Havva. Bir Lilith indi Adem diyarına. Ve insanoğlu Ademoğlu. Bu dünya Ademoğlu da insanoğlunun Havva ile de Lilith'i ayırt edemediği yerdir. Sonra kudurmuş köpekler salyalarını savurmaya başladılar. Biz de isteriz, biz de isteriz diye. Leş kargaları. Sadece insanın leşini sevdi. Allah insanı ölüme emretti. Tüm tabiat ölümü bu sayede tattı. Allah yolunda ölenlerle de Allah yolunda ölmeyenler arasındaki fark leştir. Allah'ı zikreden diller ölür. Allah'ı zikretmeyen diller leşe döner. Ayetten sabit. Ya öleceksin ya leş olacaksın. Arası yok. Olmayacak da. Ben yarın gidiyorum. Gidip dönememek, gelip görememek var. Hakkını arameden şimdiden ettin. Yarına bırakmasın. Ben Süleyman'a hakkımı helal etmiyorum.